Today in Rob's Garage, we're working on my 1985 C4 Chevrolet Corvette. We're going to replace the clutch master cylinder, including its spacer. We're going to replace the slave cylinder, and we're going to replace this pipe and hose that connect the two together. Welcome back to Rob's Garage. I'm Rob. This here's my garage where we maintain, repair, upgrade the likes of BMWs, Chevrolets, Ferraris, Land Rovers, and Japanese motorcycles. I track this M3 through various road courses around the West Coast. Be sure to like and subscribe, follow along for those track day videos. But anyway, today we're working on the C4 Corvette. For those of you who've been following along the channel for a while, you probably noticed that the Vette's been sitting up on the lift for some time. Why? Because I got a clutch problem. Having issues when I push in the clutch pedal and it not fully engaging, loss of hydraulic fluid. Wasn't sure if it was a leak or just old cylinders. So if you're ever pushing on your clutch and you feel that like it's just going all the way to the floor and there's no pressure back, or you're having a hard time shifting, could likely be what we're going to solve for today. There are ways that you can diagnose if you have a faulty master or slave cylinder. You can do that, but my advice is if one of them's broken, the other one's not far behind, and the parts are not that expensive, so just replace them both at the same time. It'll save you some time and effort in the long run, trust me. So I think we have two issues that's causing a lack of pressure buildup in the clutch pedal. And you can see one right here. On the slave cylinder, see a little bit of hydraulic fluid leaking, or it's actually brake fluid, and it's dripping down onto my headers. So where is that coming from? What's happening? Well, right here we've got a banjo bolt that is on the hydraulic line that goes up to the engine bay where you add the brake fluid for the system. And I think it's coming off that banjo bolt there. There's a crush washer that's installed underneath the banjo bolt. So obviously with the leak in the system, it's difficult to get pressure built up. And our second issue, which I didn't discover until removing this old master cylinder, is look at that. Metal shavings in there. Why metal shavings? Well, at first I thought it was because the rubber gasket that goes on the spacer here was just completely gone. And maybe, just maybe, somehow this is rubbing and we're getting metal shavings to go through the shaft there. That's what I thought. But then when I looked at the existing line that bolts into here, you could tell that it was stripped. Here we are with the new master cylinder installed, and as I went to try and tighten this line into the new master cylinder, I quickly realized I'm not getting a grip on the threads. So I think it's safe to say we just need to replace not only the master cylinder, the slave cylinder, but also the hydraulic line. I got a new one, and it came with the banjo bolt, and it came with the crush washer we need. So we're going to take that one out as part of the process. We've got this panel underneath the dashboard needs to come out. Got a few screws, at least on mine, and then you slide it out. That's going to get you access. I am underneath the dashboard. My head is near the pedals. My feet are up on the driver's seat. It's very difficult to get in here. So I'm not going to be able to probably show this on camera, all the blood rushing to my head, but to show you what needs to be removed, that's the clutch pedal, and that's where the arm coming off of the master cylinder is connecting to the top of the pedal. And you'll see this little pin on the side right there that we need to remove. That needs to come out. So I'm going to use some needle nose pliers to try and pull it out. There you can see that I took the cotter pin out. I just used some needle nose pliers to pull it out. And there's a washer behind it. And I had to use a long flat blade screwdriver to push the arm off of the pedal. So there you have it. So let's unbolt it now from the firewall. Disconnect the battery. And I'll tell you why. Because we're going to move the battery out of here in order to then remove the master cylinder. So getting the battery out is important. It gives you a little more room to be able to get that master cylinder out of the way. And of course, take the battery out, you've got to take off your side gill here, your fender. All right, now my side gills here are fastened down with these Torx head bolts. You probably don't have those. But you take a couple of them off in order to loosen the panel up. Now you see the side piece just start to come out. Just like that. And finally, we've got a bolt right here. On my car, this takes a 10mm socket or open end wrench, whatever you want. Now, just got to loosen the bracket here that holds the battery in place. On my car, it's a 13mm. Now we've got good access to the master cylinder here. Okay, we're going to siphon out the fluid that we've got in there. We've got to loosen the hydraulic line here. So I've got a 14mm brake line wrench. A little tight. We're not going to take it all the way out. It's just easier to loosen this while the master cylinder is still connected to the firewall. Kind of gives it some leverage. We have two bolts that fasten the master cylinder to the firewall. So the first bolt is pretty easy to access, as you can see here. These are 13mm bolts. One, and then with that one out, you can kind of twist this a little bit to gain better access to the second one. There we go. See that in there. I probably should get a wobble. I'm kind of doing this on an angle. When we tighten it down, we'll have to use a wobble. Get that bolt out. Just kind of slide it. And this is why you need the battery out, because as you can see, you have to slide it right where the battery goes. Now that we've got the master cylinder out, we're going to install the new one. So here's a couple features, things you want to pay attention to. The new one's going to come with a cap over the opening for the hydraulic line. So we're going to have to remove that cap before you install the hydraulic line. If yours didn't already come with a spacer, make sure you order a new spacer. This has got kind of like a gasket on each side around it, which will help protect the metal. And there's only one way it goes on. As you can see, that there's different lengths of the openings for the bolts. And then lastly, there's this little plastic piece. That plastic insert is not going to be applicable for every year C4, because I've got an 85 and the arm that comes off the clutch pedal is the perfect diameter to fit in here. So I actually don't need that. But what came on mine was simply this washer. So this slides over the arm of the clutch pedal and then sits here, and then you have a cotter pin that holds it in place, right? But I noticed that this washer, if you look at that, it's a much different size diameter. It's a bigger diameter than what's off the master cylinder. So what we did is we got the correct inner diameter washer from the hardware store. Also, we found that the threads on the firewall were not in very good shape. Let's see, one down here and one up here. They were pretty tight. So what we did is we cleaned out those threads with the tap and die set. We also cleaned up the threads on the bolts. If you're interested, it's an M8 with a 125 pitch thread. And now it's smooth as butter. So we put a little, oil on the threads, ran them through, tap and die set. Same thing with the threads there. That was a little more difficult. I just had to use a crescent wrench slowly to turn and turn and turn to get it to go through. So it took a while to go through the the firewall. But eventually we got it, and now we're ready to reinstall it. So we're going to push this through the firewall. I'm going to connect the arm on the clutch pedal, put our washer on, put the cotter pin through, and then we'll put the bolts through and tighten them down. So looking at the slave cylinder from the rear of the vehicle, you've got one bolt, 15 millimeter bolt here, and then up there is the 15 millimeter bolt, which is the banjo bolt that connects the hydraulic line. I've loosened both of them with the wrench, and as you can see, we've got brake fluid dripping down. So make sure you've got some pan or mechanism to collect the brake fluid, because it will leak and get everywhere. On your pretty garage floor, your pretty nails, whatever you've got, be sure to protect yourself, protect your hands. The brake fluid is nasty stuff. There we go. You can see how gray it is. Yeah, that's from the metal shavings. Well, there's our banjo bolt. Got a new one and new crush washer. Place this one. So I removed the bottom bolt, which is 15 millimeter, and then there's one up on top. It's kind of hard to get to, so if you have a ratchet like this that swivels, it certainly is helpful. Well, I don't know what it would be like with stock exhaust, but with these headers here, it was definitely helpful to like bend it in there. Now you could use extensions and a wobble and try to get it, you know, from the other side over here, but I was able to access it pretty smoothly, just like how I just showed you. Now the trick is getting my hand up there to remove the bolt. Well, I'll do that from the other side. Once I removed both bolts, the slave cylinders kind of came out fairly easily. And then in the process, the hydraulic line just kind of came right out. It was actually fairly easy to take it down from the bottom. I was thinking I had to pull it from the top, but brought it down from the bottom. I'm going to install the new one from the top and put it down. And just take note, there's actually two crush washers. I think I only mentioned one earlier, but it takes two, one on top, one on bottom. Took our new hose here and I dropped it in from the top, kind of went around this cable that goes for the hood release. And I slid it down in here, positioned it on, and I used my left hand to go underneath. A really tight fit because I already put the battery back in. Probably would have been easier without the battery in. And then that way I could kind of hold. You can hear me knocking the hose. See it knocking there. I was holding the hose here with my left hand while I used my right fingers to tighten this down. Just finger tight. I haven't used a wrench on or anything. And the reason I was trying to do that is to make sure that these threads didn't get stripped again. You know, the angle is a little tricky, and right there it's perfectly seated in there. So just be mindful of this. Don't force it. We'll get a wrench on there and tighten it down after we do the bottom, just to make sure that, you know, I don't need to twist this pipe any further direction. Let's get back underneath and take a look. Here's the bottom of the pipe. As you can see, I routed it through this retaining clamp here, and it seems to be positioned pretty well. So it's ready for us to install the slave cylinder, and then we will attach the banjo bolt and then bleed the system. Now we're going to install the slave cylinder. It came packaged with a cover here where the hydraulic port is. Remove that plastic cover, and then you push in the push rod, and in so doing, what I'm going to do is hold that in like this. I'm going to pour brake fluid into that opening, and then I'll release this, and then we'll install it. That way we've got brake fluid in here. We'll fill it up to the top, make sure we escape, you know, get all the air we can out of it before we actually do a full bleed of the system. Now I'm using DOT4 AC Delco. Originally when this car was built, you know, this is a C4, mine's a 85. So at the time, DOT3 was what's available. You guys can tell me if I'm crazy for using DOT4. It should be compatible. I'm not concerned about it, but tell me in the comments if I'm an idiot. Got it full of brake fluid with the piston pushed in. Can't really see it there, but the piston compressed. We've got some new bolts, M10 by 30 millimeter, 1.5 pitch. We're going to install these two bolts, Make sure that the rod is inserted, connect the boot, and then hopefully don't lose too much brake fluid in the process, and we'll install the hydraulic line. Here we are with the slave cylinder installed. I just put the bolts in by, finger tight, and now I'm wrenching them on. This ratchet with this angle has been really helpful to be able to get into these tight spots. Before you tighten it all the way down, double check to make sure that the rod here is going in correctly. So it should be matted right up against that fork there. Like that, you see? And then you can cover up the boot. Of course, I still need to torque down the bottom bolt. I don't know what the torque specs are on these bolts, so I'm just doing them tight. Put the banjo bolt through the fitting here, the hose fitting, and we have crush washers on each side. So little copper crush washers. So be careful not to drop them. It's important to use them because without, you will develop a leak. Just finger tightening this. I want to make sure the bolt goes straight in. Some of this, on this job, some of the angles are just really difficult. So you got to be careful not to force anything with a wrench and then strip threads and then get metal in the system, as you saw from what I was fixing in the first place. So that's hand tight. We'll put a wrench on there, 15 millimeter. And this comes in handy too here. I've got one of these ratcheting open ends or box ends, and it also has a swivel head. It's just really convenient to get in those tight spaces, do some ratcheting. Okay, I think we're good. I've overfilled the master cylinder on the clutch a little bit because we're going to be losing a little bit of brake fluid as we bleed the system. So with that full, I've got a bleeder bottle connected down here, which I'll show you guys a better view in a minute. But the process is going to be that Mrs. Garage is going to sit inside the Corvette, pump the clutch pedal about 20 times, hold it with her foot depressed all the way to the floor. I will then, while she's holding it, I will then open the bleeder valve, see if we can get some air and some fluid to come out, close the bleeder valve. She'll pump it 20 times again, hold it, I'll open the bleeder valve, we'll continue doing that. And as I start to see some fluid get extracted into our bleeder bottle, I'll be coming back up here periodically and topping off the master cylinder. We'll just keep repeating that process till we have a nice firm clutch pedal with no air in the system. Pump it 10 times. Okay, 10 again. Hold it. It's nice and clear. No air bubbles. Do 10 more. Got all the air bubbles out of the system. As you can see, we've topped off the master cylinder to the full line. I think we're set. Let's give it a start. Make sure that it can shift. Oh, we have a clutch pedal again. Look at that. Excellent. Mission accomplished. In my flip-flops. No more leaks on the slave cylinder. But our bolt is holding well with the crush washer. No more leaks on the master cylinder either. Job well done. Another successful repair from Rob's Garage. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope you found this information helpful. I'm not a certified mechanic. I'm just a guy who works in his garage DIYing and who likes to share his information and knowledge with others. But if you have any feedback on how to do this repair better, please add it to the comments. Do me a favor, like and subscribe. I don't use AI. I don't have any of this artificial content. This is all done by a human being, me. With little help today from my daughter recording
the outro here, but
But hello.
we'll do that. But I don't give any authorization for AI to use any of my content. This is all just from the heart, just from the head, and it really helps me out if you guys like and subscribe. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on down the road.